right, looking at quiz 3. So in quiz 3, we want to look at all methods of solving quadratic equations. So on number 1 and 2, we want to solve by factoring. The first thing that I notice on number 1 is I can factor out a GCF completely. Okay, so I see that I can factor out a 3, giving me 3 times x squared minus x minus 20 equals 0. So to factor what's inside the parentheses, I have a negative 20. So 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. I need opposite signs with the biggest one being negative. So all of these multiply to give me negative 20, but only 4 and negative 5 will add together to give me my middle term of negative 1. So my factored form is 3 times x plus 4, x minus 5 equals 0. Take each x and set it equal to 0 and solve. Subtract 4 from both sides to get x equals negative 4. Add 5 to both sides to get x equals 5. So that tells me that x equals negative 4 and positive 5 are the two solutions to my equation. And don't forget, when you factor out a number, you don't set the number equal to 0. You only set the factors of x equal to 0 and then solve your equations. So we solved the equation and got negative 4 and 5. It's the solution to this equation. It's the x-intercept of the graph. It's the roots of the graph, and it's also the zeros of the function. Okay, looking at number 2, if I subtract 3x from both sides, okay, I'm going to get 4x squared. 31 minus 3 is a positive 28x. So I have 4x squared plus 28x equals 0. To solve this by factoring, first thing again I notice is I can take out a GCF. The GCF this time is 4x. So put the 4x in the front and divide. And this is my factored form. Now take each factor of x and set it equal to 0. Divide by 4 to get x equals 0. Subtract 7 to get x equals negative 7. So we have x equals negative 7 and positive 0. On 3 and 4, we're asked to solve by square roots. So to do that, I need to get x squared by itself. So subtract 8 or add 18 to both sides to get 9x squared is equal to 25. Now divide both sides by 9, and we get x squared is equal to 25 ninths. Take the square root of both sides, and remember, when you take the square root, you've got to have the positive and the negative root. The square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of 9 is 3, giving you positive and negative 5/3 as your final answer. On number 4, you have 1/3 x squared minus 7 is 43. So let's add 7 to both sides to get 1/3 x squared is equal to 50. To get rid of the 1/3, we're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. And that's going to give us x squared is 150. Now to solve, take the square root of both sides. Don't forget, you got to have the positive and the negative root. So with 150, I know that's 25 times 6. So the square root of 25 is 5, and the 6 will not simplify. So that's going to give me 5 square roots of 6. Okay, on number 5, we're going to complete the square. So if you group these two together, remember to complete the square, this term has got to be positive 1. So let's factor that out of only x squared and x terms. Okay, so now let's take our middle term, which is 4, and divide it by 2 to get 2. And then square it to get 4. So we're going to add 4 here. Well, we really didn't add 4. We added 2 times 4, which is 8. So that means I'm going to go outside and subtract 8. Now I've got my perfect square trinomial. Let's factor it. The square root of x squared is x. The middle term is positive. Then the middle term here is positive. And the square root of 4 is 2. 134 minus 8 is a positive 126. Okay, now this is my vertex form. We need to solve by subtracting 126 from both sides. And that's going to give me 2 times x plus 2 squared equals negative 126. Divide by 2, and we get x plus 2 squared equals negative 63. Now to solve for x, let's take the square root of both sides. The square root here will just get rid of the square. So now we have x plus 2 equals 63 is 7 times 9. So the square root of 9 gives me positive and negative 3. The negative gives me an I, and the 7 stays behind. Now subtract 2 from both sides, and you get x is equal to, this minus 2 needs to come to the front, and then my plus or minus 3i square roots of 7 will stay in the back. On number 6, let's move the 7x over. So we'll have x squared plus 5x equals 1, and now move the 1. Okay, so in order to do this one, we are going to, well, I was doing it wrong. It wants me to do the quadratic formula, and I was completing the square. Let's try this one more time. So we'll have x squared plus 5x minus 1 equals 0. So once we get to this point, we know the quadratic formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So when we plug in, negative b means the opposite of b. So let's see what our numbers are. A is equal to 1. B is equal to 5, and C is equal to negative 1. A is the number multiplied to your square, B is the number multiplied to your x, and C is your constant term. So let's plug all of this in. We have negative B, which means the opposite of whatever B is. If B is 5, we've got negative 5. B squared will be 5 squared minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is negative 1, all over 2 times A, which is 2 times 1. Let's look at the discriminant, which is the number under the radical. 5 squared is 25, 2 negatives make a positive, and 4 times 1 is 4. So we have the square root of 29. 29 is a prime number, so that's not going to simplify. So we have x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 29 over 2 times 1, which is 2.